even more tax cuts and a balanced budget. What about Social Security and Medicare? Hello, members, super savers, and Bond Course fans. I hope you're healthy and well. This past Tuesday, just a bit more than 6 weeks after taking office, President Trump gave his first big speech to Congress, and at 1 hour and 40 minutes, he set a new record for the longest annual presidential address to Congress ever, as Politico reports. That blows past the previous record held by former President Clinton, who spoke for 1 hour and 28 minutes in 2000. I think our 13-year-old phrased it best at about the 1.5 hour mark. How long is this, and should I make more popcorn? In any case, we watched his presidential address to the end, and those of you who did as well would probably agree with us when we say that Trump put on a big show with pointed arguments as well as emotional moments with special guests of honor in the gallery. His speech was all over the news, so I don't think he and his team can really complain about a lack of attention on this front. So with that in mind, let's talk about our 5 key takeaways from Trump's presidential address. What was discussed, what wasn't, and what this may all mean for the American economy, Treasuries, and your money. As usual, here's our front of video disclaimer. For a detailed disclaimer, please refer to the end of this video. Let's dive in now, folks. Takeaway 1. President Trump has a deep conviction on manufacturing and tariffs. There has been a lot of uncertainty and back and forth on tariffs in recent weeks. But in his speech on Tuesday, what we saw was that President Trump really has a deep conviction that tariffs will bring manufacturing back to our country and make America great and rich again. But for Trump, it's more than that. He literally says that tariffs are not just about protecting American jobs. They are about protecting the soul of our country. He then quotes $1.7 trillion of new investments in America that were announced by both domestic companies such as OpenAI, Oracle, and Apple, as well as international companies such as SoftBank of Japan and TSMC of Taiwan. So yes, Trump remains unapologetic about tariffs, even though he acknowledges that it won't be all smooth sailing ahead. In his words from Tuesday evening, there will be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that. It won't be much. Now, President Trump seems to be right about the disturbance, and the tariff turbulence rages on as we tape this video. Just today, one day after moving ahead with 25% tariffs on Mexican and Canadian imports and addressing Congress, President Trump granted a 1-month exemption on his stiff new tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada to U.S. automakers, according to this AP article. Let's see how the tariff saga continues, but overall, we should all remain prepared for President Trump to keep pushing aggressively on strengthening our domestic manufacturing, as he promised he would while on the campaign trail, and that he will not be shy to use tariffs as a tool to do this. Even if such moves could entail some disruptions, uncertainties, and risks that may not be to everyone's liking. Trump really does appear to have a strong belief that tariffs will bring manufacturing back to the U.S. and increase jobs. Plus, he seems to think he's already seeing first signs that it is working from these initial investments from SoftBank, Apple, and so on. Takeaway 2. President Trump did not mention the dollar and Treasuries. In the 100 minutes he spoke, President Trump did not talk about our currency and Treasuries. Now, this may not mean that the topic is completely off the table. As we explained in this recent video about the Mar-a-Lago Accord, linked below for easy reference, while the president is familiar with tariffs from his first term and comfortable wielding them aggressively to manage international relations, the expectation is that he will probably proceed more carefully and cautiously on everything to do with the dollar and Treasuries, as he doesn't want to destabilize financial markets completely. That said, we'll keep an eye out whether this could be an area for more initiatives by the administration later on, as this will surely be an area of great interest to our fixed income community here at Diamond NestEgg. Takeaway 3. President Trump did not mention cuts to Social Security or Medicare. So we've received quite a few emails and comments from some of you recently about cuts to Social Security and Medicare. Here's an article that I received earlier today along those lines. Trump breaks promise not to cut Social Security. Well, the good news here is that in his presidential speech on Tuesday evening, Trump did not talk about any cuts to Social Security or Medicare benefits overall, which has been the position that the administration has taken thus far. This is not to say that the administration will not let go of employees within the areas of Social Security and Medicare, just as it has been doing and or plans on doing across the rest of the federal government. And just as President Trump promised to do during his campaign as a means of reducing federal spending and fraud. Per this Social Security press release, the plans are to reduce the size of the bloated workforce and organizational structure, with a significant focus on functions and employees who do not directly provide mission-critical services. And it does seem that the Social Security Administration is keeping up with its mission-critical services for the time being, because I know some of you have gotten your retroactive WEP and GPO checks sooner than you expected, and that you're quite happy campers at the moment. So that's good news. Moving on now to takeaway 4. There were old tax promises and new tax cuts as well. As expected, President Trump confirmed that he remains committed to delivering on the key tax promises he made during his campaign. He wants to extend the tax cuts from his first term that are due to expire at the end of this year, as well as make tips, overtime pay, and Social Security payments tax-free. But then President Trump added 2 new promises on top that seemed designed to support his agenda of bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. First, to cut taxes on domestic production and all manufacturing, which would even be retroactive from January 20th, 2025. And second, in his own words, I also want to make interest payments on car loans tax deductible, but only if the car is made in America. So, extension of the current tax cuts, delivering on the additional tax cut promises from his campaign, and the new tax reductions on top. How can the government pay for all of this is a big question, which brings us to takeaway 5. Trump is targeting a balanced budget as his goal. I have to be honest, this one caught us a bit by surprise. And I quote, "In the near future, I want to do what has not been done in 24 years. Balance the federal budget." I'm all for a balanced budget, of course. You almost have to be when you invest in Treasuries, as most of us in this community do. And I really hope we can get there in the near future, as President Trump says. But how we'll get there is a bit fuzzy to me at the moment. Let's start with the current budget proposal that the House approved at the end of February. This proposal envisions about $4 to $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, most of it for the extension of the tax cuts from Trump's first term, but only $1.5 to $2 trillion in savings. There aren't any specifics at this point on where the savings will come from, but many suspect that the burden for these expense reductions could fall to a good extent on Medicaid. Now, President Trump seems to want to close the gap by pushing hard on eliminating inefficiencies, waste, and fraud. Doge got a big endorsement during his speech, and he quotes some ideas and large numbers for where the savings might come from, such as an estimated $500 billion in fraud per year, as per the Government Accountability Office, that he wants to eliminate. He also proposes getting rid of about $50 billion in tax breaks and subsidies from Biden's CHIPS and Science Act. But even if successfully implemented, all these savings initiatives together probably won't be enough to close the gap. We would really need strong economic growth on top if we want to get our public finances back in order. The business-friendly thrust of tax relief and deregulation that the new administration has been promising should help, and programs like Trump's proposed Gold Card program, essentially a green card for entrepreneurs who want to move their ventures to the U.S., may contribute a bit as well. And let us not forget about inflation. President Trump reconfirmed his commitment to bringing it down. And aside from putting the blame for the current egg price inflation on the previous administration, mentioned general deregulation, as well as less environmental constraints and more domestic oil and gas production as means to get it done. This is all to say a balanced budget sounds great, but at this point, it's unclear to me how exactly the details will work out and whether our budget deficit for 2025 will continue to grow as per the current projections, or whether we can make some progress towards stabilization and consolidation. And did I mention that we might have another one of our recurring debt ceiling crises lurking around the corner? According to the Nonpartisan Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, it might come as soon as March 14th, so about a week from the time of this taping. Where does Trump's presidential address to Congress leave us then? So, here's our personal take after watching the full 1 hour and 40 minutes on Tuesday evening. Like it or not, Trump has a clear economic vision. America first, with a fast-growing economy that is deregulated, lightly taxed, and a manufacturing sector that is being rebuilt. He will use tariffs and the threat of tariffs aggressively to reshape the international trading order because he has a true conviction that tariffs, or the threat thereof, will work in this instance. And at a later stage, we may even see something along the lines of what's been discussed in the Mar-a-Lago Accord to partially reshape the global currency system. President Trump will probably also try to leave Social Security and Medicare benefits untouched, while reducing the size and inefficiencies in those agencies. Plus, he will do his best to reduce the tax burden on individual citizens, which implies again that we will need a much leaner, cost-effective government if we want to keep our budget in good or at reasonable working order, which also means leveraging Elon Musk and Doge to find and cut areas of fraud and wasteful spending, some of which President Trump highlighted in his address to Congress. As you can see here, it's a fairly long list. $22 billion to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens, $45 million for DEI scholarships in Burma, and $8 million for making transgender mice are some examples. Feel free to pause at this point and read through this if you wish. But here's the thing. Whatever you think about the merits of the concrete programs he mentions, and whatever fraud and or wasteful spending is being or will be uncovered, will these cost reductions combined with the 5 million gold card program and everything else President Trump plans on doing, will this be enough? Can it work to make America great again, as the administration hopes? We certainly hope so for the benefit of all of us in this country, but there are risks, with the first risk being persistent and or growing deficits and unsustainable debt. If the promised tariffs and tax reductions are not balanced by sufficient growth and savings, respectively. This was the curse that almost destroyed Argentina in the past 30 years. The second risk is stagflation, meaning stubbornly high inflation, resulting, for example, from a combination of high deficits and tariffs, coupled with disappointingly low economic growth because tax reductions and deregulation didn't work as expected. This was a curse of the U.S. in the 1970s before Reagan. And the third risk is higher than expected disruption of the international economic order. If the tariff wars evolve into an international breakdown and not just a realignment, we could, worst case, see a rerun of a 1930s-style global depression, as some are currently fearing. President Trump has laid out a very full agenda, one that a pessimist might argue is unlikely to work. After all, how do you cut taxes and balance a budget at the same time? The optimist in me, though, thinks that there is a chance this could work if all the stars align in the Trump administration's favor, meaning tariffs or the threat of tariffs does not lead to a full-blown trade war, and in fact brings at least some manufacturing back to the U.S. We can find enough Americans and legal immigrants to fill all those new employment positions. The likes of Apple, Microsoft, and NVIDIA continue to innovate and grow. Federal spending and inefficiency is reduced, and we become an even bigger and more productive nation. Like I said, that's the optimistic, all the stars aligned for the Trump administration version that might indeed usher in something like the new golden era for America that Trump has been speaking about. And the realist in me, what I think will actually end up happening is that there will be some wins for the Trump administration and some losses. meaning maybe some tariffs, trade deals, and tax cuts will go through, but probably less than what is currently anticipated. And the federal spending will come down, but also less than expected, especially given all the pushback there is from those who are impacted. Also meaning that as much as I think a balanced budget is an honorable goal, and I welcome it, I'm not sure it's a realistic one in the near future, given everything else the Trump administration has on its plate. Of course, in this instance, I would be more than happy to be proven wrong, as I mentioned earlier. The important thing in my mind is not necessarily what America will look like in 4 years. This outcome is, for lack of a better term, out of our hands. But we survived Nixon and Watergate, Reagan and the Iran-Contra affair, Bill Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky affair, as well as the Biden family investigations. So, if I were a betting kind of girl, I would bet that America will still be here in 2028, and so will Treasuries and the dollar. What's really important is that right now, our Treasuries continue to be the safest, most liquid fixed income investment in the world. Our dollar is still the world's reserve currency. There are just no realistic alternatives out there at this point. And a very large percentage of the most valuable companies in the world are still American. As our Diamond NestEgg regulars know, we are huge fans of America, and there is no other country's debt, currency, or companies that we would rather hold as a predominant part of our portfolio. And until that changes, which it has not yet at this point in time, there is no need for us personally to change our investment strategy. So, did you watch the presidential address on Tuesday evening? And if yes, what were you happiest or least happy about? Do you think President Trump can cut taxes and achieve a balanced budget? Drop a comment below and let me and everyone know. All right, members, super savers, and bond course fans, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. And as always, if you're interested in learning more about treasuries and bond investing in general, then check out this video here on our bond courses. Or come join our next live member Q&A on Sunday, March 23rd at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time. We'll be diving deeper into this month's 2, 5, and 7-year treasury auctions and all things fixed income. I've also linked all the details on our bond courses and YouTube Super Saver membership below this video for your convenience. And for those of you who also subscribe to Your Financial Journey, this latest video is a cool visualization of the top 100 most valuable companies by market capitalization as of the beginning of this week. And this one here from Caitlin is a fun one on the history and evolution of gold reserves, which countries have the most gold, the different locations where our country's gold is held, and why President Trump is worried that the $400+ billion of gold that should be in Fort Knox might not actually be there. See you again very soon with more brand new wealth building content for your financial journey.